The African Centre for the Constructive Resolution of Disputes hosted a workshop titled Reflections on the 2024 Elections in Southern Africa, Outcomes, Trends and Prospects for the region. Over the past 2 days, the event took place against the backdrop of a pivotal year for elections across Africa, with a particular focus on Southern Africa. The workshop critically examined the outcomes of the 2024 elections, explored trends in governance and democracy, and assessed their implications for political stability in the region. Researcher at the Thabo Mbeki Africa School of Public and International Affairs, Advocate Sipho Mantula, joins us for more. Advocate, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a really pivotal year as we look at the 2024 elections across the continent and, of course, reflecting on those outcomes. What were some of the findings as you look to the trends with the elections?
Evening, Mpo, and even to your viewers. Indeed, Mpo, remember 2024 was a super year of elections. And this workshop or this session was very important to reflect on few areas. Like you have said, that we are looking at the trends, prospect, we are looking at challenges also that went through. If you look at the SADC, Mpo, we had 8 countries that went for the elections, starting with Comoros early this year in January. And it was followed by both South Africa. It was followed by countries like Botswana, Namibia, Mozambique. But one of the key issues that appeared also when we opened in this workshop yesterday was to look at the link between peace, security, and the issues around democratic governance. Where are the gaps? And what we have found is that, yes, we have new trends. We have new oppositions that have become governments. We have seen in Botswana, we have seen in Mauritius, and we have seen also a change in the South African electoral space. Hence, we have this coalition government that is in South Africa. We have also looked at the post-electoral disputes or violence that we see in both Mozambique, as well as you look at Namibia. It is in the electoral dispute resolution stage. But what was key also was the issue of electoral observation. The observer missions that have been engaged. We were informed by the SADC election support officer, one of the colleagues, Elijah, from Gaborone, that the SADC had to spend almost 210 days for almost those 8 countries I've mentioned, but they only observed 6. They did not observe Comoros. Tanzania, it was not observed. But when you look logistically, the issue of some of the countries having elections back to back, if you recall that, you had Botswana, you had Namibia, you have Mozambique having the same election during the same month, and that's how it has been critical. But like I will say to you, Mpo, one of the key areas that came out is that you had what I will call an upset, a historic change in many countries. We know Botswana, and we know what has happened also with the challenges that we see in Mozambique with Frelimo, as well as the opposition in that country.
As you assess the implications for political stability, those concerns found in Mozambique, that in itself morphing into a nationwide movement. We've seen the ripple effects and, of course, affecting some of the movement by the borders as you look to entry and exit. What is your assessment there on some of the trends that have emerged, or perhaps trends that remain consistent across the continent when it comes to African leaders moving out of power?
No, definitely. I think one of the senior analysts and a advisor of Accord, Ambassador Welile Nhlapo, raised that question, that key question of the military coups that we have seen in the Sahel, the evolution of the Organization of African Unity in the early 60s, and the AU, how to deal with coups in the African continent, but also reluctance of African leaders to understand that there's a shift, there is a wind of change that is moving in terms of issues of governance. But one of the trends that we are seeing is that we have more young people and women who want representation. And that's where you will find that in all those 8 countries, we have only one female president in Namibia. So some of the issues is also representation in terms of power in terms of women and youth. And secondly, also, it is the role of the media, the disinformation and the misinformation that goes on. We had the Electoral Commission that were part of this workshop from Comoros, Zanzibar, South Africa. And one of the issues that came was how to deal with cybercrime, how to deal with what happened in South Africa when there was the issue of the election result dashboard going off. Was it hacking? Was it manipulation? Those are the trends that are coming now in terms of technology in the elections. And the role of securitization of elections also came on very clear when you look at countries like Mozambique now, Namibia, we look countries like South Africa. How do you deal with also the policing of the electoral ballot? And that's where we are seeing challenges in the SADC region, but also broadly in the African continent. The delay in most of the African countries to can respect their electoral calendar. Those are the challenges that we have picked up.
As you speak and touch on the electoral observation, which was informed by SADC, having mentioned that of the 8 countries contesting elections, only 6 were observed. I mean, that in itself really just highlights a big concern when one has to look at the election credibility, especially now. I mean, as you mentioned, Mozambique, we know that a lot of the concerns are centered around allegations of fraud.
Absolutely. And in our session, we had the High Commission of Mozambique. We had one of the experts from Mozambique. And I think one of the issues that came out also is the peer review mechanism in the region that should be respected. The question of electoral justice, how do we handle the issue of the post-electoral violence or disputes that have emerged in Mozambique? And the role of SADC also. Remember that there was an extraordinary summit of SADC that was supposed to have dealt with the question of Mozambique. But because of the sensitivity around it and the issue that we have a court petition that has been lodged by Podemos, SADC was also caught up around that. And we spoke about the mediation efforts of SADC, that there is a need for SADC to activate its peace and security architect, which will include the role of the panel of the elders that should have looked at the question of.
Okay, we appear to have lost our guest, of course, speaking there to researcher at the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs, Advocate Sipho Mantula. We thank him for his time.